Hi everyone, welcome to my channel, Math Made Easy with Terry in 10 minutes. And we're going to be talking about making the subject of formula. This is a very important skill you need in mathematics. So I'm going to talk about this in this video. Before I proceed, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And if you have any question, don't hesitate to contact me. And also, if you've not subscribed, I don't know what you're waiting for. Please do subscribe so that when I post new videos, you'll be the first person to know. All right. So let's get cracking now. First thing first is that the ability to arrange formulas or rewrite them in different ways is an important skill in mathematics because sometimes you might be given A is equal to, let's say, B, C plus D, but you might need this to be rewritten in the form that D must be on the left-hand side, or you need B alone to be on the left-hand side, or you need C alone to be on the left-hand side. So how do you go about this? So this is a very, very important skill that you need to have, okay? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to talk about some key things you need to know. And also, I'm going to also list out the topics we're going to talk about in this series or the concepts we're going to discuss in this series, okay? So let's get started. So the first thing you need to keep in mind is that um, when you're talking about the subject of formula, is basically meaning that you have to rearrange the equation or formula so that we have a single variable equal to the rest of it, okay? So basically, when we say making the subject of formula, all right, or formula or equation, all right? So when you're talking about something like this, so it means rearranging the equation or formula, all right, so that we have a single variable, okay, equal to the rest of it. Okay. So for example, if for instance you had A is equal to B plus CD, okay? So you can also write this again as B is equal to A minus CD, and you can also do the same thing for C. You can also do the same thing for D. Is that okay? So that's what we're trying to say. So you have a particular variable equal to the rest of it. All right, so we've gotten that out of the way. We've gotten that sorted. So now there are some key things that you need to know. Okay, there's some key points that you need to keep in mind when you're doing subject of formula, all right? There's some key points to know. The first thing is that the subject of the formula must be alone on one side of the equation, okay? So the first thing is that the subject of the formula must be alone on one side of the equation. Okay, it's very important, must. Or you can use another color for that. So must, okay, must be alone on one side of the equation. Okay, so if for instance we have, let's say we have A is equal to B plus CD, all right, and you were told to make B, all right, subject, all right, we want to make B the subject of formula. Okay, so you want to make B subject of formula, so that means B must be alone on the other side of the equation. All right, so I'm going to show you how to make subject of the formula, but what I'm just trying to say, because we want to make B the subject, you can see that B is alone on one side of the equation. All right, so the next part now is the second thing you need to know, the second rule that you need to keep in mind is that whatever you do to the left-hand side, all right, you must do to the right-hand side of the equation. Or whatever you do to one side of the formula, you must do to the other side of the formula, all right? So the next one is whatever you do to one side of the formula, okay, whatever you do to one side of the formula, you must do to the other side of the formula. So you must. So it's very important. You must do the same thing. You must do to the other side of the formula. Okay? So whatever you do to one side, you must do to the other side of the formula. All right? So let's take this example again, for instance. So don't worry, we're going to solve several examples and several concepts. So what I'm just trying to say is, for instance, if you have A is equal to B plus CD, all right? And you want to make, let's for instance, you want to make B subject of formula, all right? So whatever you do to one side, you do to the other side. So you have A is equal to B plus CD. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to maybe subtract CD from both sides. So because I'm going to put it this way. So I'm going to subtract CD from both sides. So here I'm going to add minus CD. And here as well, I'm going to add what? Minus what? CD. Okay, so are you seeing it? So I'm going to add minus CD to both sides. So I added minus CD to the left-hand side, and I added minus CD to the right-hand side. Are you seeing it? So then, because now we've done that, so it's going to become minus CD plus A is equal to B plus CD. Plus times minus will give you minus what? CD. So minus and plus, minus CD plus CD will cancel out. So then we then have B is equal to minus CD plus A. Or we can say A minus CD is equal to what? B. So you can write it in any of these way. It's still the same thing. So you can see, still the same principle. Anything you do to the left-hand side, you do to the right-hand side. So anything you've done, it could be addition, it could be subtraction, it could be raising to the power, it could be multiplying, but anything you do to the left-hand side, you must do to the right-hand side, or anything you do to one side of the equation, you must do to the other side of the equation. All right, so usually when you want to arrange equations, there are about 5 things you usually do. You could either add or subtract. You could either multiply or divide to both sides. So you can, like in that example, we added minus CD to both sides. So sometimes you could subtract to both sides. Sometimes you could also multiply to both sides. Is that making sense? You could divide. You can raise both sides to the same power. You can convert to index form. You could cross multiply. So there's several things you can do, and we're going to talk about this together. So I'm going to write it down. So because I know students will take notes. So to rearrange, you may have to. So the first thing you might have to do, you go add or subtract the same quantity to both sides. Okay? You can add and subtract the same quantity to both sides. So for example, if you had A is equal to B plus CD, like in this case, we might decide to add minus CD to both sides. So we're adding, right, minus CD to both sides. And it's going to give us minus CD plus A is equal to this. Is going to then cancel this, equal to B. Or you can also subtract. So if, for instance, you had A is equal to B plus CD, I can decide to then subtract CD from both sides. Are you seeing it? So it's going to give me A minus CD is equal to B plus CD minus CD. And this is going to cancel that. And then we're going to have A minus CD is equal to B. So you can see that this one, the answer we got here is exactly the same thing that we got here. Can you see? It's the same thing, it's just that it's being rearranged. So you can rearrange this as well to be A minus CD is equal to B. All right? So you could add or subtract the same quantity to both sides. Now, the second thing as well that could happen in some cases is that you might end up have to multiply. So number 2, you might end up have to what? Multiply or divide the same quantity on both sides. Might end up have to multiply. Don't worry, we're going to solve several questions on this. It's just for me to just write it here. You could multiply or divide the same quantity on both sides. Okay, so for example, if we had A is equal to B over C, all right? I want to make B the subject of formula here. So we want to make B the subject. Okay, subject of formula. So that means we have A is equal to B over C. So I can multiply both sides by what? By C. Are you seeing it? So remember, so far you do anything to the left-hand side, you must do the same thing to the right-hand side. So this is going to give me C times A will give me AC is equal to, this will cancel this, will be equal to B. So you can see in this case, I multiplied both sides by C. Also, you can also divide. So if we had, for instance, A is equal to BC, and you want to make B the subject of formula. Okay, you want to make B the subject of formula here, all right? So we have A is equal to BC. So what I do, I'm going to multiply both sides by what? 1 over C, or I can say I'm dividing both sides by C, okay? So, or if you want to do it in terms of division, you can say, instead of multiplying by 1 over C, you can say, all right, I don't want to multiply. I want to then divide both sides by what? C. Are you seeing it? Then this is going to cancel that. Then therefore you have B is equal to what? A over C. And that is that. Okay, so you can either multiply both sides or you can divide both sides. You can, so in this example, like I said, if I decided to multiply, so I can say I want to multiply both sides by 1 over C to still give you exactly the same thing. The C will cancel this, so it's going to give you B is equal to A times 1 will give you A over C, which will be exactly the same thing like this. So you can see, you can divide both sides or you can multiply both sides. Now, the third thing as well is that in some cases, you might have to raise both sides. So that will be number 3. So in some cases, you'll be expected to raise both sides to the same power. So let's assume we have x raised to the power 2 is equal to 4, for instance, and you are asked to find x, okay? Or you can have maybe, for instance, you have x raised to the power 3 is equal to 8, okay? Let's make it 27, okay? So you might end up to raise both sides, or in some cases, you could even have negative x raised to the power minus 3 is equal to 27. So now, so we want to make x subject of the formula in both cases. So in these 3 cases here, we want to make x subject of the formula. Okay, so we want to make x subject of the formula. So what you can do in this case, we can raise both sides, okay, to power 1 over 2. So because 2 times 1 over 2 is going to give you x, are you seeing it? Raised to the power 1, and that will give you 4 raised to the power what? Half, and that will give you plus or minus what? 2. So please go to the laws of indices and quadratic equation. You can see that there. All right, so in this case as well, I'm going to raise this one to 1 over 3. So far, you do exactly the same thing to the left-hand side. You can do exactly the same thing to the what? To the right-hand side. So that means this is going to give us x is going to give us what? 27 raised to the power 1 over 3, and that will give us what? 3. Now, in this case here, I'm going to raise both sides to minus 1 over 3 because I need to get rid of the minus sign. And I'm going to raise this as well to minus 1 over 3. And that will give me x is going to give me 27 minus 1 over 3. And that will give me 1 over 3. All right, so please go back. I have the loss of indices, and we can play around with that. So the fourth thing as well, which will be the final one that you could be asked to do, is you could be asked as well to convert to index form. Okay, so you could be asked as well to convert to index form. So for instance, you could have maybe, for instance, square root of x is equal to 9. Okay, and you are told to make x subject of the formula, or you could have cube root of x is equal to, let's say, maybe 8. So in this example, we're told to make x subject of the formula. Okay, so what we say, so I have a video series on the loss of indices. Please make sure you have a look at it. And I showed you how to convert to index form. So that means square root of x is something as x raised to the power what? Half equal to 9. Then to get rid of this half, we'll raise both sides to the power of what? 2. Okay? Is this making sense? Then it's going to give us, so this is going to cancel out, and x is going to be equal to 9 squared, and that will give you what? 81. Are you seeing it? So you found x, and that will give you 81. That's the same thing here. You could also be asked to convert to index form. So it will now be x raised to the power of what? 1 over 3, and that'll be equal to what? 8. Then, in order for you to get rid of that, you now raise both sides to what? 3. And then you can have x is going to be 8 raised to the power what? 3. So that is how you do, and you can now make x subject of the formula. And there's another very, very common one. I think I have to mention it here as well, is the cross multiplication. In some cases, you might be asked to do cross multiplication. Sometimes, let me just add that as number 5. So in some cases, you might use cross multiplication. It's another method that you might end up using. Okay, so for instance, if we have x over a is equal to b over c, all right? So the concept of cross multiplication is this is going to multiply that. So it will be x will multiply c will be equal to then A is going to multiply B. So A will multiply B. So you have XC is equal to AB, or should I use another color for that? So you have XC will be equal to what? AB. Then you can now play around. So if, for instance, you wanted to make X here subject of formula. So if, for instance, you wanted to make X subject of formula here. Okay, so if in this case you wanted to make X subject of the formula, then I can divide both sides by C or multiply by 1/C, and this will cancel that. So therefore, we're now going to have X will be equal to AB over what? Over C. Okay, so the concept of cross multiplying is just that you must have an equal to sign, and it's one of the skills that you need to know. All right, so that is that. So that is a quick introduction of some of the things you need to know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just list out, there are 7 concepts we're going to talk about in this video series. So we have 7 concepts I'm going to talk about. And I'm going to try and break it down based on what we've talked about. So the first one, or maybe, I can combine this into 6. Maybe I can combine this into 6. Okay. Yeah, let me combine this into 6 so that because the other 6th one, where we talk about formula with roots, I can combine that with roots and powers. Okay. So let's break it down into 6 concepts. All right, so the first one I'm going to talk about is going to talk about simple formulas. So I'll talk about simple formulas. All right, then I'm going to talk about formulas with fractions. So how do you make subject of formula with fractions? Then the next one I'll talk about formula with bracket and fraction. So these are cases where you have both fractions and brackets, okay? Then the next one I'm going to talk about formula with root and fraction. Okay. Then the next one I'm going to talk about formula requiring factorizing first. So we're going to have formula requiring factorizing first. So in some cases, before you solve, you have to factorize, okay? Then the last one I'm going to talk about, I would say formula with roots and powers. So this is what I was trying to say. So formula with roots and powers. So these are the concepts I'm going to talk about in the next video. So the next video, I'm going to talk about simple formulas. Then after that, I'll talk about formula with fractions, formula with brackets and fractions, formula with roots and fractions, those that require factorizing first, and roots and powers, okay? And that with that. So that's for that. And yep, so I'm gonna go to the next video, will be simple formulas. So how do you make sense of the formula when you're given simple formula? So it's very important that you subscribe and click the notification bell so that when I post the next video, you'll be the first person to know. All right, see you soon. I'll see you in the next video.